Okay, I'd like to open session 9B, which is foreign language approaches. We have 3 presentations here. The first presentation is by Svetlana Dimitrova-Guzeleva. The title is Implementing an Ecosystem Approach to Developing Academic Oral Presentation Skills. Svetla Dimitrova is an associate professor from the Foreign Languages and Cultures Department at NBU. She's a colleague of mine. So, Svetla, you have 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I will try to be as brief as possible. And
Okay.
because I have the flu, please excuse my voice. I will try to do my best, but it may sound a little bit strange because of the flu. Okay, right. So because I'm presenting to colleagues, I probably need not go into details about, what oral presentation skills involve. And you all know that they are among the main building blocks of what we call communicative competence. And they, together with the other 3 C's, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration, they are some of the key 21st century skills which are crucial for the success of all people, not just young people, both in the context of higher education and at the workplace. How does the Common European Framework of Reference define oral presentation skills? Just to give you an idea of what different skills are involved in that. They say that an oral presentation is a kind of a speech, a type of a speech which is delivered addressing an audience at a public event, just like our conference here, or a meeting, a seminar, or a class, which would refer to our students' presentations. And although the talk is clearly prepared and sometimes even rehearsed in advance, presenters rarely try to recite the presentation word for word. And they also try to use some visual aids to make it easier for the audience to be on the same page with them. And the visual aids could be a PowerPoint presentation, like mine here, but it needs not be the case. And during the presentation, the presenter demonstrates their verbal ability to build up the argument systematically in good language, trying to take into account their audience's perspective, highlighting the significant points, supporting it with examples, concluding appropriately. That would be the verbal part of it, the verbal skills, but also their paralinguistic skills when we communicate with other people in getting the message across. And that would be appropriate use of body language, keeping good eye contact with the audience, adapting the pace of delivery, not talking too slowly or too quickly, projecting their voice appropriately so that it reaches the members of the audience. And of course, the presentation skills do not stop with the presentation delivery itself, but the presenter should be able to take some questions at the end of the presentation and answer them spontaneously in order to cater for the audience's needs. And of course, from this description of what oral presentation skills involve, it should be clear that it's not just a production skill and meditation skill in getting our concepts across to the audience in appropriate language, in appropriate manner, but there is also a certain degree of interaction, both during the presentation itself and, of course, after the presentation when we take questions from the audience. It's a rather complicated skill, which, in the Common European Framework of Reference, in the companion volume, which came out in 2020, it's described in detail using these can-do statements and there is some focus both on the type of address, the format, the structure of the presentation, also how well the presenter takes into consideration the audience's needs, and as well and his ability to handle questions during or after the presentation itself. And we've got a number of tables like this with descriptors, with standards like this. I won't go into detail about this because we don't have enough time to do that, but I will try to focus on the problem which I tried to deal with in my case study. As university lecturers, we often assume that our students come to the academia prepared to deliver oral presentations, and they don't really need any special instruction in what an effective presentation involves. We believe that the good mastery of language, sometimes the foreign language, that would be the foreign language, is enough in itself to guarantee their success. But this is not the case, as our experience shows. And the students themselves are not aware of this deficiency themselves until they fail in presenting their academic work successfully. What are some of the problems? This will probably ring a bell and will be recognized by all of you to some extent. They copy and paste whole paragraphs from the resources that they use. And then they read from the screen or from the script, prepared script. Often there is no cohesion or coherence, there is no internal structure in their oral presentation. And then they find it really challenging to depart flexibly from the text. They just keep within what they have prepared. They display figures and illustrations without providing the necessary explanation. And of course, they have poor paralinguistic skills as well as their body language, no eye contact with the audience, or they just stare at us as lecturers because we have to assess their performance. Their pace of delivery could be too fast or too slow, too monotonous, not very enthusiastic. They speak too quietly sometimes, not aware of the needs of the audience. And of course, this list is not complete. Other problems could be added to it. How did I try to deal with that problem? Well, as my title suggests, I tried to adopt an ecological approach to the learning process. And here are some of the main tenets of this ecological approach. By the way, this is nothing new, nothing that we haven't really done in our classes, but it has been systematized by the people who adhere to this approach in a more systematic way. So the classroom is regarded as a complex and dynamic system, a kind of an ever-changing ecology, and the change in one place triggers off a knock-on effect on all other elements in the ecosystem, because all of the elements of that system are interrelated and interdependent, not just the material constituents of the ecology, but also the more non-material, non-physical things like the activities themselves, the beliefs and the attitudes of the students and our own, as well as our interactions. Another major tenet of the ecological approach is that each learning context contains some potential opportunities for learning. They're called affordances. And it is up to the teacher to recognize them and capitalize on them, creating the necessary scaffolding, the enabling conditions for the learners to grow and develop. And this learning potential would be utilized much better if learner agency is fostered. Learner agency would suggest that learners are given voice and choice in what to do, so that they have a sense of control over their own learning and a sense of ownership of the results achieved. As well as we should really encourage the sort of collective effort in the classroom. That is, learners are not struggling on their own or not even competing against other learners, but they try to gain new knowledge through sharing of ideas and collaboration. These are the main tenets of the ecological approach. And as you have probably realized, one of the main aspects of that approach is fostering learner agency. How can teachers foster learner agency in the classroom? Once again, probably most of this will be familiar to you and things that you anyway do or have done in previous classes. But this is when you when the activities in the classroom are not like black boxes and we don't really know what's happening and why it's happening, at least it doesn't look so for the learners, because you discuss the task goals, the activity goals with them at the start, and you also provide them with your standards, with your criteria, which you will use to assess their performance. You also, as I mentioned earlier, give them a choice in how to achieve these goals, what to do and how to do it. You also try to cultivate a curious mindset, an attitude of inquiry. That is, encourage questions. There is no such thing as a bad question. In this way, they would take responsibility for their own learning, filling in the gaps in their own knowledge. And you will also invite them to cooperate with other learners in solving the problems, doing the tasks, because, you know, they can learn from each other and much better than from us. If my classmate knows something which I don't, I will be much more motivated to learn it as well. You also try consciously to encourage your learners to experiment, to take risks without penalizing errors, without sanctioning them for what they do wrongly. And you also encourage reflection. Reflection is another key word in this approach. This is self-reflection during the activity and at the end of the activity, so that they are able to self-correct and find out the answers, the right answers for themselves, which will lead to boosting their confidence in what they do. And a confident learner is a successful learner. You will also encourage other students to observe and reflect on their peers' performance, to peer assess their presentations, because learners are more likely to respond positively to the criticism of their classmates than to our criticism. And of course, learner-driven feedback sessions should always start with on a positive note, with what learners have managed to achieve, and then focus on some errors which they would be able to overcome on their own. Okay, so that was learner agency. Now, together with the ecological approach to learning, I also adopted Cope's four-stage model to the learning progress, which once again lays emphasis on reflection, both reflection in action while we do the activities and reflection on action at the end of the activity. You know, probably you are familiar with that emphasis which John Dewey laid on reflection, and he argued that it's not from experience itself that we learn, you know, learning through doing things, but it's mostly from reflecting on experience that we gain knowledge. So the learner's journey begins with a concrete experience, and we encourage the learners, we try to encourage the learners to carefully observe and reflect on what they see, that is, reflect in action, in order to try and understand better what they experience. Then at the end of the activity, we group them together and they collaboratively try to analyze and interpret what they saw in trying to come to new concepts or modify pre-existing concepts. That would be pre-existing concepts of what a good presentation is. Usually high school gives them a wrong impression about what is a successful oral presentation. And then finally, they put this to the test. That is, they invited to produce their own oral presentations on a topic of their interest. And this way, the learning cycle goes, the full cycle, and a new cycle begins. All right.
Hi, Svetla, you have 1 minute.
Just 1 minute. I started late. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I try to apply this the ecological approach to learning and Cope's learning cycle into my case study, which was conducted with Year 2 students of English studies in the post-pandemic years. And I used both qualitative and quantitative tools to collect the data so that I could, triangulate and validate the results. I'll go directly to the results then. Okay, of course, you will be able to read my paper and, look at the different aspects of the case study in more detail. As I said, the results themselves very, very briefly. So observations show that the adoption of this ecological approach made the students much more consciously try to meet the assessment criteria when planning. That is, at the planning stage, they became better planners of their oral presentations. They made proper use of visual aids. There were just prompts and facts which would help the audience keep track of what they were saying. They would provide figures and diagrams with explanation. They would structure their oral presentations well. They would find it more easily to depart from the prepared text. And they will, body language would improve. They will stand, not sit. They will speak more enthusiastically and project their voice so that it reaches all members of the audience. The data collected through formal assessment of their oral presentation skills also confirmed this positive tendency. The difference of 0.65 was really statistically significant difference in their results on the oral presentations in their EAP course after the formative training in oral presentation skills using the ECO approach, then their score, their assessment of the oral presentation skills in their English for General Purposes course. Okay, and their subjective appreciation, their opinion of the efficiency of this approach, data collected through the structured questionnaire also confirmed that they really appreciated the benefit of applying this approach. There was raised self-confidence during presentation, more objective self-assessment, increased motivation, greater sense of learner agency, and better understanding of genre requirements. And I'll just show you the conclusion. I'll stop here and, open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions or comments, I will be happy to take these now.
Okay, thank you, Svetla, for this illuminating talk. We don't have a lot of time for questions, but maybe one or two short ones, if you have any.
I really tried to, search for a good, picture here to illustrate the ecological approach to oral presentation skills, the ecology in the background. But yeah, sorry. Questions?
Any questions, anybody?
It's a very interesting talk, and I don't want to take a lot of time, but I wanted to double check. How did you design the questionnaire? Because it seems like a very good questionnaire.
The questionnaire, you mean when I collected
the survey you inquired the students? Here.
It was in the format of a questionnaire, which I based on what would be the expected outcomes of applying the ecological approach in learning. And this would be different questions, sometimes open-ended questions, sometimes list questions, which required them to assess their experience and, say whether they have really learned anything through the formative part of the case study, when they tried to, choose a topic, present on it, do a little bit of self-reflection, do a little bit of peer assessment, and then we together discuss their presentations during learner-driven feedback. But that was based both on the theory of what the ecological approach would lead to, and the structure of our own case study. I hope I managed to.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Svetla. That's all we have time for. So thank you for your talk. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I stop sharing now, right?
Okay. Our second presentation is, the topic of the second presentation is corpus research on multi-word discourse markers for raising translation awareness. I'll have to ask Deirdre to say her full name, please. Say the names of the authors. Yeah, please.
I am Giedrė Valūnaitė-Oleškevičienė, a professor from Mykolas Riomeris University. My research interests are in teaching and learning languages, and as we have that translation program, study program, so for me it is important to research how to raise translate awareness.
Okay, Deirdre, one thing before you start. Can you see me? Can you keep track?
Yeah, I see.
Can you see me now? So I'll show you 5 minutes, then 3, then 1. Okay. So please look at me. Look at me from time to time.
I wanted to say, if I manage to share my recorded video, so then it is 16 minutes and that's it.
Okay. You have the floor. You have the floor.
I am very much, worried about the sound, because you never know how it happens.
No, we can hear you perfectly, so you can go on.
Okay, but let me try share that video. It's okay, let me go to sharing mode, and you will have to tell me if you can hear it. Oh my God, okay. Is the screen visible?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, but now, because I know when I teach my students, sometimes it is very resistant with the sound. Let me double check.
We can't hear anything.
Yeah, you don't hear it. Okay, let me try to change my microphone. Maybe this would work. Okay, let's put it on 100. Yeah.
Hello, conference participants.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Focus research on multi-word discourse markers for raising translation awareness. Prepared together with my colleague, Dr. Haya Liebeskind. So first of all, a little bit of background. Language is generated in chunks by using formulaic constructions. And some lexical bundles are used to organize discourse as discourse markers, further I call them DMs. And discourse layer is important in language production, communication, second language learning, and translation. Talking about discourse awareness, student awareness of discourse models, how to regulate discourse, and the pragmatic properties of discourse components is one of the most crucial aspects of teaching a foreign language to more advanced learners. And especially it is important in teaching students studying translation and raising translation awareness. Research on discourse markers in translation has been acknowledged as a way that may provide certain insights into the different shades of meanings and functions of discourse markers. Discourse markers in language, there are a few observations. If a learner misses words such as you know, well, the native speaker cannot identify any error, but the speech might sound impolite or even dogmatic. And research on learner corpora demonstrate the importance of discourse level knowledge, especially at more advanced levels of language learning. Research background, discourse markers are used in both written and spoken discourse, to connect ideas, to guide the reader or the listener through expression by ensuring that the ideas are grasped correctly. Multilingual studies are more complicated as languages differ in the use of discourse markers and their expressions. And recently, research on parallel translated corpora has gained interest and international research interest, especially investigating the effect of register, translation direction, the shifts of meaning. The contradictory discourse or the contradictory ideas on discourse markers in a way define the problem of the research. On one hand, language, especially spoken, is characterized by discourse marker use. However, some of them, like I think, well, are sometimes referred to in a critical manner as indicating lack of fluency. Still, discourse markers are abundantly used and they enhance communication if used appropriately. So the research question in our research in this presentation is if English multi-word expressions used as discourse markers in social media texts remain multi-word expressions in Lithuanian and Hebrew translation, and what changes they undergo in translation and why. So naturally, the research object is English multi-word expressions used as discourse markers in social media texts and their counterparts in Lithuanian and Hebrew translation. The aim of the study is to examine multi-word expressions used as discourse markers in TED Talks, English transcripts, and compare them with their counterparts in Lithuanian and Hebrew translations, searching for reasons for the changes of discourse markers in translation. Research objectives were first to create a parallel research corpus for the research, to identify multi-word expressions used as discourse markers, to analyze discourse marker translations in Lithuanian and Hebrew, and to determine if they function as discourse markers, and to disclose what linguistic forms they acquire in Lithuanian and Hebrew translation, what could have motivated translator choices. So research corpus. TED Talks are an open resource and a useful resource for parallel data, which could provide large amounts of parallel data for research. Besides, parallel corpora are used as a pool of data for statistical MT systems, and TED Talks is one of the most frequent data resources used to explore multilingual neural MT or NMT. The parallel English transcripts and their corresponding Lithuanian and Hebrew subtitles were extracted from TED Talk transcripts, and then the sentences were aligned to make the parallel corpus for further research. The entire corpus contains about 90,000 aligned sentences, and it is published in Linda Claren repository. So now a little bit about discourse markers. Discourse markers help textual coherence and discourse management, and are used for making coherent speech appropriately segmented to enable textual understanding. Discourse markers perform important functions such as signposting, signaling, and rephrasing by facilitating discourse organization. Discourse relations may remain implicit or be expressed explicitly through discourse markers. Discourse markers are mainly drawn from syntactic classes of conjunctions, adverbials, and prepositional phrases, as well as expressions such as you know, you see, I mean, and many others, which are already multi-word discourse markers. Languages differ in the use of discourse markers and their expression. An example of English, the expression of causality could be realized through content verbs such as cause or lead to, or through discourse markers signaling the causality relation. Discourse markers are often polysemic, which means that a single expression of a discourse marker may perform in expressing various discourse relations. An example of English sense. It could express temporal relation or could express causal discourse relation, depending on the surrounding context. Some languages prefer using simpler structures connected by a variety of discourse markers, while other languages favor complex sentences and sparsely using explicit discourse markers. There is also translation challenge. Translator choices of inserting discourse markers to make the flow of the ideas smoother in the target text. However, they risk making the translation sound foreign or transposing the grammatical syntactic structure. The translators end up using different means of expressing discourse markers or simply omitting them. Research methodology. So we used phrase-based MT. It was applied relying on two main reasons. NMT techniques do not allow extensive processing of phrases, and NMT procedures are not as explicit as phrase-based MT procedures. So the current study does not involve the full set of phrase-based MT systematic procedures, as it is used just for phrase table construction, which is a single step on phrase-based MT paradigm. So what results we got? Research findings. So first we looked in a tendency to function as discourse markers. So we see that English discourse markers demonstrate a high tendency of being used as discourse markers in Lithuanian and Hebrew translations. Lexical forms in translation. Discourse markers are either translated into multi-word expressions or one inflected word, or they are completely omitted. Concerning pragmatic inferences, additional particles or connectives in Lithuanian and Hebrew translation are added, which could be related to more contextual pragmatic inferences. And now I would like to give a few examples from the big pool of data. So we will look at translation of I think. So in Lithuanian, the most frequent one of this multi-word discourse marker is a one-word expression, an inflected verb, manau, which due to Lithuanian being a highly inflected language, fully represents the verb pronoun cases. And also it features a number of omissions, twice higher than in Hebrew parallelized sentences. Concerning Hebrew translation of the same multi-word discourse marker, I think, the most frequent translation refers to a male derivative. The choice of gender in first-person pronouns could depend on the gender of the speaker. And also in Hebrew translation, the translation includes the additional integrated connective, and it could be related to the pragmatic inferences drawn by the translation from the surrounding context. Another example is of you know. In Lithuanian, the most common ones are also one-word verbs like žinote, žinai, žinot, which represent again verb pronoun cases. Another quite frequent translator choice is the single particle na or single particle juk. So we see that the multi-word discourse marker is translated just into a particle. And cases of multi-word expressions with additional particles could be also found, such as na jūs žinote, which could be back translated look, you just know, or nesuprantate, back translated look, you understand. So it could be explained by pragmatic meaning inferred by them from the surrounding context. In Hebrew, the most frequent variations are the ones referring again to the male gender, including both plural and singular. The prevalence of the male derivatives could be explained by the nature of the Hebrew language, which has the feature that male derivatives are used while addressing purely male and mixed audiences. Multi-word expressions in Hebrew remain multi-word expressions. However, concerning this multi-word discourse marker, a high number of omissions were observed. Now, what we found on grammatical transformations. In Lithuanian, we can say one-word discourse markers prevail. The multi-word discourse marker, is translated also into connectives, adverbs, and as I have mentioned before, the discourse marker with particles. In Hebrew, multi-word expressions as DMs prevail. Interesting cases include translations with OK, additional word, which is a usual colloquial saying in Hebrew, or guess what? Again, also colloquial saying in Hebrew. And sometimes two connectives used successfully. There are also some cases when a connective is just added, as in the following example, then of course. Adverbs used in the Hebrew translation are also present, like indeed, well, clearly.
Hi, Giedre. Less than a minute.
So after analyzing the few examples and seeing how discourse markers are transformed in the translations, we would like to make overarching conclusions that this form of case study may be useful. Maybe a useful way to strengthen students' language awareness and analytical skills, and in particularly pertinent for students specializing in English philology or translation. The current study reveals a tendency of integrating additional particles or other additional lexical items in Lithuanian or Hebrew translated discourse markers, the so-called phenomenon of overspecification, which could connect to the relatedness of discourse marker functions to the rhetorical domain. Particle or connective integration into multi-word expressions in both languages may carry the pragmatic meaning inferred from the context. So far, the conclusions.
Okay. Wait, I will stop sharing. Yes.
Okay,
now
thank you.
Ready.
Thank you, Giedre.
Now I'm ready for the question.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your research with us. Discourse markers are always problematic for people studying other languages, so it's worth researching. So I'll give the floor to anybody who would like to make comments, also from the speakers and from people in the audience here. If you'd like to say something, comments. Yeah. 1 second, maybe we need okay, there's one question. If you turn towards the camera, they'll be able to see you. The camera is over there. Do you see the camera?
Oh, yeah, I
All right.
see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the enlightening presentation. Indeed, you've chosen an amazing corpus for analysis, TED Talks, which we extensively used at our university too in all kinds of classes. So my question to you is, what was your primary criteria in selecting the TED Talks? And do you have any favorites that are best suited for teaching students about discourse markers and raising the awareness through TED Talks? Thank you.
I have my favorite TED Talks, but in this case, we couldn't do this because we needed to parallelize the sentences. So we didn't choose the favorite, but we, asked the machine to choose the sentences which are parallel in English, Lithuanian, and Hebrew. So we relied on technologies.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you, Giedre. I don't see anybody wanting to ask questions, but you have to. I have to tell you that we've been doing this all day, and we're sort of feeling a bit tired.
I know. You
so
need to squeeze
that
in.
explains that. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your
thank
talk.
you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Emanuela Chichova and from New Bulgarian University, and the topic of her talk is Innovation in Foreign Language Acquisition Involving Students in Real-Life Projects. Okay, will you be able to see me when I wave this about? Yeah?
I'm not really sure because I would like to present to put my presentation on the whole screen, but
Okay.
I will minute. So it's minuted. Don't worry about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope that you could interrupt me at any minute if you think it fits.
Go on then. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I will share my screen now. Great. Okay. So the experiment we discuss in this presentation of a competition in applied linguistics in English and French for the secondary education for high schoolers in Bulgaria, with the participation of university students and teachers. At NBU, in the Applied Foreign Languages for Administration and Management program, the common teaching language is English, and the students choose a second foreign language between French, Spanish, German, and Russian. The project involved 5 students with a C1 level of English and A2 to B2 levels of French. During their first 2 years at the university, students are required to improve their English to a C1 level and to reach a B2 level in their second foreign language. They often have some notions of their second foreign language, and they need different materials and approaches to their studies than those that we apply normally for beginners. At the same time, current students are encouraged to take part in contacts with prospective students, thus bringing a steady influx from high school students in the bachelor programs of the university. Contrasted to their learner's role, this new role is much more proactive and it changes to their learning process as well. It was possible to bring together foreign language learning and translation skills in a real-life project thanks to the competition. Students were required to design tasks for it and then to evaluate the participants' works. Our participants were 4 first-year students having an A2 level of French and a C1 level of English, 1 second-year student having a B1, B2 level of French and a C1 level of English, and 2 teachers, one of practical French and one of practical English. The experiment is closely related to a few out-of-classroom teaching learning processes. First, it can be seen as part of service learning, a process where students apply their academic skills and knowledge in real-life situations to provide a service for a wider community, this community being the high school students. Much more clearly, we can see the involvement of project-based learning, in this experiment, students connect their skills and knowledge to a real-life situation and make it work, providing a real out-of-class outcome. Project learning approaches have demonstrated improvement in foreign language learning through translation as well. The business in the classroom approach has proven useful in this setting. Students had to design tasks taken from the world of work, which they will experience themselves after the end of their studies, translation and professional correspondence. The flipped or inverted classroom was also put into practice during the setup phase, where students had to prepare and present results of their work in class. Here are our research questions. We wanted to see first the extent to which the university students' current foreign language level in English and French allows them to carry out service-related education tasks. Next, we wanted to know if the students' language skills and translation skills would improve thanks to their participation in the project. Further on, we examined the extent to which their participation in a real evaluation project improves their foreign language learning skills. And lastly, the extent to which the students improve their organizational and team skills as a result of the project. Here are the stages of the project. The students were given first the general goal, stated as follows: design activities for foreign language learners, learning high school students, putting them in a business context. From that point on, the university students had to think first of situations in which they would like to test the high school students' knowledge. Once they decided on the situations, they were tasked with finding the adequate language content. They took turns in proposing textual content and testing it for compliance. During this process, they evaluated their own skills for resolving the tasks. Once they chose the adequate content, they had to come up with criteria for evaluation of the participants in the competition. Their own performance in the tasks had to be re-evaluated against the business principles reigning in the selected tasks. They were thus able to assign points for each task and for each example based on their difficulty. They decided as well that the tasks for the high school students will consider the above-mentioned languages, being Bulgarian, English as first foreign language and French as second foreign language, which were common for the university students as well. The participants in the competition had to show that they mastered expressions in the three languages, even though on a different degree, and that they could convey the message correctly and in conformity to the discourse situation. And after the competition, I'm sorry about this, it appeared on its own. So you have, they assessed the works, they chose the best works, and they evaluated, they presented the program to the high school participants. So for the first task, the students decided on commercial translation of commercial slogans. It was done so for marketing purposes. It was chosen because it had very creative language, and their situational character was put forward, and as well as their contextual richness. The practical work was to compile a Bulgarian, English, and French corpus of commercial slogans, and to propose mutual translation of propositions of proposed slogans. This is an example of the first task. Here you can see the English and Bulgarian variants. The slogans focused on original products from the countries that have this official language, or companies from these countries. So the authenticity of language was deemed important, as the group decided that an already translated slogan could result in a too easy translation into another language. And all of the 9 slogans given in their original languages were required to be translated in the other 2 languages. And here you can see the examples in English and in Bulgarian. So the first one were the French ones, and these are the English and Bulgarian examples. For the second task, professional correspondence, there was a letter of complaint in French. It was proposed as a reading comprehension, and they had to produce a letter to a colleague in English asking for advice, and another letter to their boss proposing proposing solutions to this situation. In both letters, they had to state what the complaint was. So this was chosen because professional correspondence is a skill and is a form that has very particular constraints, and they had to be respected. And there was, of course, levels of familiarity that we had to see as well. So this is the example. I won't comment on the text because it will be too long. In brief, so they had this simple situation in a restaurant. They had 3 problems that they had to address: slow service, wrong order, and overpriced bill. We decided that these will be very real-life situations because we didn't want them to be too complicated and difficult for students to solve. The third and last task was machine translation post-editing. And as we know, even though we knew that this skill is not taught in, we thought that as it is required in business and it is very much used by high school students and by university students, we decided that they were familiar with this. So we wanted really to test their, not to test, but to give them an opportunity to show that they can master this post-editing. Of course, the post-editing was done on a Bulgarian text. The originals were in French and in English from the European Parliament site. 2 identical texts and on the same topic, and then we had to translate. We had the machine translation in Bulgarian, and we asked the high school students, based on the machine translation in Bulgarian, to compile the best sounding Bulgarian text that they could in order to skip all the inaccuracies of machine translation. So these are like very brief examples just for the length of texts. There were not long texts, really short ones, and they had to underline the parts where it wasn't correct. So now we're focusing on the evaluation criteria, and so for the first task, the criteria were accuracy, the slogans, discursive adequateness, and bonus points were given for all the slogans that were creatively translated. For the second task, we assessed the type of letter, if it was formal or informal, if it had an introduction, a conclusion, a nice development, if the information was correctly conveyed from the French text, and of course the language, if the situation was adequately addressed. For the third task, the machine translation post-editing, they had 45 points, and they had to point out the inaccuracies of machine translation. They had to render the Bulgarian text accurately, and so they were marked on all of this. Here are some answers to our research questions. So for the first one, to what extent did their current foreign language allow them to carry out service-related education tasks? We saw that they were able to do online research in English and French on the levels of language that they had. Of course, for English, it was clear that they could, but the question was for French more than English. They managed to discard original English slogans, meaning that slogans that were translated into Bulgarian and French, but were originally in English, and to find suitable translations for the original slogans. About the second research question, did their language skills improve? We did a self-evaluation survey because, in fact, after the competition work, we didn't do a summative assessment, so we didn't manage to find out if they improved, but the students self-assessed themselves as their skills as improved. And about the translation skills, we had the same replies, and they are to be evaluated in the current semester. So now in January, we will evaluate their translation skills, so we will have a result on this. To what extent did the students' participation in real evaluation project improve their learning skills? Where they were very much more eager in the tasks that they normally had to do in French class. As they are evaluated on real life simulations, they knew already what this entailed because they had worked on this kind of tasks with the high school students. And they had a better understanding of the purpose of project-based learning. About their organizational and team skills, they showed good collaborative work. They created this kind of rich and promising project that will be carried on again in the university. And their self-evaluation survey showed that their skills, that they thought about their skills as improved. 4 out of 5 students indicated this. So in conclusion, the experiment proved useful as for foreign language learners, for high school students, we had as well. However, there were limitations. This study wasn't entirely centered on foreign language acquisition, and the group of students was too small, just the French language practical course. Some parameters for further research could be a larger group of students, some oral tasks to be performed during the competition, like, for example, a negotiation situation, which needs more close monitoring students or by other participants. And, of course, more languages, not just English and French and Bulgarian, but possibly German, possibly Spanish, or any language that that is taught in Bulgarian high schools. These are my references, and thank you very much for the attention, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Emanuela, for your excellent
Thank you.
timekeeping. Okay, so questions, anybody? And thank you for sharing your research with us. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I have a question, if I may. What sort of machine translation did you use? Because you kept mentioning.
We used Google Translate. We thought that this would be. I asked students what they thought. What was the most at point of their studies? University students were using mostly Google Translate for some reason, and we decided to go with it as the most popular and maybe most accessible tool that was known to high school students as well.
How about if you had chosen 2 large language models, let's say Google Translate and DeepL? I think this would have been like a good comparison between the 2. Yeah, maybe.
Well, this is a great idea, and we may put it in our next competition. This is a great idea. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Well, I think we're all looking forward to having some coffee after the session. So thank you, Emanuela, very much. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. With this, we can end the session. So thank you for being here. Yeah. And see you over coffee. Okay.
So good evening, everyone. Welcome all of you in session 10B, the multidisciplinary one. Since Marius is not here yet, we are going to start with Magdalena from Jury Participation in Literary Prize to Exploring Literacy Studies, Fostering Deeper Engagement with Literature. The floor is yours, dear.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you even from distance. And since I'm not there, so I thought if you don't mind, I would probably just put on the recording of my presentation that I know it's only 13 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions. Is it okay for you? I can share it if you want me to.
Yes, please. You can share.
Okay. So just just tell me whether you see or.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me online. My name is Magdalena Boshkova, and I'm a French teacher at New Bulgarian University. I primarily teach general French to students from various academic fields. Before I start my presentation, which I will be careful to keep short, I want to say a few words about the basic idea of what I want to present and how it all started. I have always loved literature, but in school, and this applies to most students, I hardly enjoyed studying it. When I went to university and discovered how enriching and inspiring literary studies could be, I was more than surprised. And I decided that I wanted to share this passion. One of the reasons for this negative attitude, perhaps, is the fact that often, almost always, I would say, literature classes begin with theory, names, facts, and movements. And only after that, if time allows, is there space for creative and open engagement with a specific text. And when 5 years ago I started working on the project I want to tell you about, I was amazed by the motivation, interest, and enthusiasm of the students. So I will tell you a story about how, after encountering inspiring practical activities, students come to realize the benefits of understanding and knowing some theory. Hopefully you see the title of my presentation. I will explain not only the essence of the project called the Goncourt Choice, but also propose a specific methodological approach aimed at sparking students' interest in literary study, history, and theory. So let me show you my agenda. I'll briefly introduce the idea. I'll discuss the Goncourt Choice project itself. I'll present my approach to methodology, and I'll conclude with perspectives and ideas for applying these methods to a broader range of activities. And then I'll be glad to answer your questions, of course. So it won't surprise anybody. I'm obliged to start with the reality we all face, the omnipresent digital content, and the huge change of habits related to reading and perceiving information. That said, I truly believe that the written word, as we know it, is far from having lost its fundamental importance in creating well-educated, critical thinking, and life-ready people. This is what we all try to do in our everyday life as teachers, right? The question is how to integrate additional activities into students' already demanding and heavy life and curriculum. So I'll try to answer this question. You may have heard of the Goncourt Prize. If not the most prestigious literary award in France, it is certainly the most famous one. Established in 1903 by the Académie Goncourt, it is awarded annually to a novel written in French and published in France. Over time, several variants of the prize have emerged, including the International Goncourt Choice. This initiative, organized by over 40 countries and regions since its first edition in Poland in 1998, allows juries of schools and university students to select a winning novel. In Bulgaria, the Goncourt Choice is organized by the French Institute of Bulgaria and involves teams of students from bilingual high schools and university. It all started in 2018, and the New Bulgarian University participated for the first time in 2019. So the feature of the project, how the selection of the books is made. For all international Goncourt choices, these are always works drawn from one of the Académie Goncourt selections, which means 15, 8, or 4. In Bulgaria, we work with the 4 novels from the last third selection. This is a pre-established and clear and objective framework which opens the possibility of external point of view and interpretation of the selection, and also allows the teacher to develop strategies for finding connections between the books. This is a golden opportunity to introduce some notion, for example, the one of intertextuality. So the selection of participants, these are students learning French from secondary and higher education institutions. Each team is formed by a teacher in charge, and the participants are between 4 and 8 usually. While the teams of the other participating universities are composed of students studying French philology, the one of New Bulgarian University includes students from the general education courses in French at B2 C1 level, who have already chosen their major fields of studies, which are seldom related to literature and often fall outside the humanities. And this is a feature which is particular and necessitates a different approach of the process. So about the process, it takes between 3 and 5 months. There are 5 stages. The first one is organizers choose 1 page from each of the 4 books, and the team members are invited to write a piece of creative writing. This is an interesting stage. There is a competition of these writings, and the great advantage is that participants get to know the text in a slightly different way and feel engaged and intrigued, and they really want to read the real sequel. Another positive point, and I really want to stress it, is that the writers need to focus on the style and the detailed observation of the text in order to write a coherent continuation. And this is a first step toward introducing the theory and initiating a discussion of the literary characteristics of the text. Then the second stage, distribution of books and beginning of the active reading. Here, students need to elaborate a list of criteria. Then we have the third stage, discussion and comments, including online meetings with the other teams. And then comes the fourth stage, final deliberation held at the French Institute and chaired by a French-speaking author. Each team is represented by 1 member, and they all gather around the table and take floor to defend the book. All this is done in front of an audience composed by the other teams and teachers, the other team members and teachers. They vote, and then comes the fifth stage, announcement and reading of the winning competitions. Just a few words about the challenges for teachers, how to motivate students, how to engage them with this extracurricular project, and some others, but I'm not gonna develop this. For students, it's challenge related to the language skills. Not all of them feel confident in their ability to read and interpret literary text. Writing a sequel is also a challenge. But I really want to share with you that none of the participants ever expressed the slightest regret at having accepted the invitation. So several words about the methodological choices. I'm going to tell you about this students' involvement and how it is related to evolution of interest. It's clear that there are a lot of benefits for the students, and even though my focus is slightly different and I'm interested in how to engage the participants in the desire to go deeper into literary studies, I should mention the general benefits, like they experience in participating in a project, the teamwork skills that are developed. They have the opportunity to meet and work with a well-known contemporary French author, and so on and so on. These benefits are shared by students not only for Bulgarian teams, but also from Switzerland and Brazil. And they also add things related to advantages of making friends, traveling, and emotional engagement, which is extremely important. And I think it's a stable foundation for building skills and fostering an interest in exploring the literary field more deeply. As far as it's concerned, in link with the history and theory of literature, it's sure that analyzing and theorizing the Goncourt project can be approached through a variety of prisms and related to several scientific fields like linguistics, sociology, language learning, and more. But if I have the audacity to claim innovation in the educational process and methodological techniques, it is particularly in the progressive and reverse introduction of elements of literary history and theory. On the progressive side, I already explained the whole process. As students progress, they come to realize that the tools offered by literary theory are extremely useful. As for so-called reverse side, again, it involves the simple but inconvenient approach of introducing the basic concepts of literary science, not beforehand, but after participants have been given the freedom to write, read, analyze, and reflect without being constrained by predefined framework. The fact that the project is extracurricular activity allows us to break out the traditional framework of teacher as the bearer of knowledge and the students as passive receivers of that knowledge. Throughout the project, the teacher assumes the role of a benevolent guide and an on-demand consultant. I'll say some words about the conclusions and perspectives. Reading and talking about literature can and should be a joy. The purpose of deepening knowledge and introducing students to literary theory is not to redirect them toward another academic field. The true aim is to enhance enjoyment and to demonstrate in a particular manner how exposure to the achievements and reasoning of great thinkers who have articulated their ideas into theories and concepts enriches our understanding of text and amplifies our pleasure in reading. So this competitive aspect, empowerment of participants, the variety of tasks, and the adoption of atypical roles serve to move away from the conventional model of presenting information and requiring its often uncritical memorization and reproduction. It is extremely important to know that the Goncourt Bulgaria project is just one possible example of a framework for applying these methods. And I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm glad to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any question for Magdalena? So let me ask one. How the teachers are planning to address these challenges that they pointed out?
I'm sorry, can you just
Yes,
say it again?
You mentioned the challenges that the teachers pointed out during the progress. So is there any plan in order to be addressed, and in which way?
The challenges for the students or for the teacher? Yeah. Nah, because for the teacher,
teachers.
yeah, I do have plan. My plan is my enthusiasm, and that's I really like this project. I'm truly convinced that this is a good one. So for me, it's easy. For students, I start with promising them a lot of things like chocolates or stuff like that if anybody is unhappy at the end. And that's why I claim I have the audacity to say that none of them ever expressed the regret, because I always ask them at the end whether they regret their participation and whether I need to buy the chocolate I promised. But yeah, this is on a funny side. Otherwise, of course, there are challenges. Not all the students are, as I said, feel comfortable, and sometimes they struggle with reading these texts. And it's not evident, but as the project is voluntary, there are no grades, there is no assessment, and they are the decision makers. This really reverses the situation, and they don't feel obliged. I'm far from telling them that they need to do something. I try mostly to convince them that it's a pleasure, and it's something that is going to be interesting. And there are some rewards. First of all, this competition that they participate in with their writings, but also the fact that they have certificates, very, very beautiful ones, from the French Institute et Académie Goncourt. They have their pictures on the site of Académie Goncourt. So it's really rewarding. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
So, is Marius here? No. So I will ask Julia and Christina. Here with us, please.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I am Julia Hermaniuk, and it's my colleague, Christina Borovinska. We present application design thinking in teaching transportation disciplines. We are from Ukraine, National Lviv Polytechnic, and modern scientific and technological progress requires educational institutions to introduce new teaching methods. One of these innovation approaches is design thinking, which focus on creative efficient solution based on user needs. So it fosters critical thinking, creativity, real-world challenges in the transportation sector. So our main goal was to develop and implement a design thinking methodology for teaching transportation disciplines. And we also aim to assess how this methodology influences the development of situation, professional competencies, increase motivation, and improves readiness for solving practical problems. We conduct an experimental study by dividing students into two groups, which one control traditional, without using design thinking, and experimental number two, experimental group, which using design thinking methodology. So the design thinking methodology including 5 stages. The first emphasized our students need to understand what user needs, like transport company, railway workers, and other. Next stage was define, clearly identify the problem, actually problems. The next idea develop various solutions and prototypes, like develop models for using simulation process in transport technologies, and finally test test, evaluate solution with real-world feedback. Test the solution in a simulation conditional. So we could use this 5-stage and implement it in our transport sector, in education sector, of course. For example, if we speak about railway station, an example is optimization of train schedules. The first, emphasize. Students interact with railway workers and passengers to identify issues. Next, define. If we speak about define, determined that the schedule was inefficient. Idea suggests various solutions like increasing train during peak hours. Of course, it's very, very important for us, but can be another decision. So, prototype. Create a simulation of the new schedule, and finally test, simulate the schedule is testing environment. In these pictures, you can see how our students practical use of the design thinking methods in the transport infrastructure design. You know, there is a war in Ukraine, so our students implementing this methodology is very important for them because always stressed, always depressed and tired, and your methodology is very important because reconstruction, transport infrastructure after the war is very important for us, and the same like Gran Canaria for us with Christine is first important, yeah, because it's like stay here. We feel better and distract with war. So, result indicate a significant positive impact of design thinking on the educational process, higher creativity and innovation in the experimental group, improved practical skills such as teamwork and projects management, and increased critical thinking and analytical skills. And these pictures, we compared different situation between two groups, scatter diagram, correlation between level design thinking and test result and indicator, and the result histogram and indicator.
In our article, we mentioned some challenges that we have now in our educational process, and if you want, you can find it in our article when it will be published. And now we analyze these challenges with what we received after implementing a new methods to our process educational. And so what we can see that the interest of students came higher, that they try to use critical and design thinking. And I want to say that it is not very difficult in our specialties because we can find a problem in everyday our everyday life, yes. And so we try to to ask our students, look through the window when you have like automobile traffic, or sometimes it is more difficult with railway the railway stations or railway traffic, yes, because we couldn't see it near our university, but and we tried to make attention of our students to finding these problems. And also I want to say that but one of the challenge is to make our professors interested in using new methods. Yes, because you know that if professors are working for a long time in the same disciplines, in the same specialities, they have the same program like a math or physics or chemistry, and it is difficult to change their mind. Yes, so firstly, we need to start from the professors, and after that to make students interested in this. Because sometimes we can hear from young people, oh, why do we need to study 5 years? We can look TikTok video and we can know everything, yes. And I was speaking with professors from Florida, from Miami University, and she said that the same situation is in USA. Also, TikTok is now the modern university. So we need to do a lot for our students to make them interested in this. And and it will be very good as a result, because in our university we don't have like a subject as design thinking or critical thinking in like a all studying program. We try to use some topics. We try to like put it in some facultative course, but it is not a usual program for our students. We need to implement design thinking to our educational program, and also we try to use, and Julia she did and she does a lot of work to give for students a possibility to contact with a practical practical implementing of the studying method. She tried to like to make some excursion to railway station to present for students how it looks like in real life. And as she said that when she asked students, what do you remember of your course excursion? So yes, and yes, we have some pictures of the implementing some this design thinking methods, and also our students won a project of how it's named, a successful start to the career from our Ukrainian railway like ministry, yes. And so they received a money to make a big big traveling for railway station in Western region, yes. Also, we 2 weeks ago we had a day of railway workers, and all week Julia had very interesting practical classes.
So focusing on the comparison, I was saying that I would like to underline some specific items. The first one is every discipline requires a specific equipment. In dance, it's required a specific clothes, and that's vary depending on dance, of if we are dancing in class, in a rehearsal, or on a stage. For example, in the slide, you can see the attire that the dancers use every day. For example, some slipper, demi-pointe or pointe shoes, leotard, tights, and skirts, some trousers, a hair up in the band. And in the study of law, for cases, we also need some material. For example, in criminal law, we could use the Spanish Constitution, the Spanish criminal procedural law, the Spanish civil procedural law, the criminal code, the civil code, of course, the jurisprudence, national or European one, depending the matter. I don't know. If we change the scene and we go to the stage of a theater, or we change to the courtroom, we have to change the clothes. So we will be more formal attire, or we have to use more formal attire, such as tutus, depending the period of the ballet, we can use what type or another type that you can see there. And if we go to the trial, we have to use the robes of the toga, that is the Spanish toga that we use here in a trial. And they have also some difference between if you are playing a role or another one. For example, it's not the same if you have the principal dancer or the second dancer, and it's not the same if you are a lawyer, prosecutor, or a judge. Secondly, dance and process are based also in a specific vocabulary. That is based on a particular and regulated movement linked in a logical and coherent manner. We call it steps, and we have different types of steps. The first has the position, then we have some pliés, relevés, jump, pirouette. Or we have to also some exercises that are going to do in the bar, or some adagios, or the choreographers are really different to the repertoire that is the more classical dancer. Likewise, the institutes and the figure of the process are regulated and follow an order. I have put there more or less the order of a Spanish process, so you can read more or less all the states, is that jurisdiction, competent courts, parties, type of process, blah, blah, blah. Sentence, appeals, execution, is that you have to control and to pass for each one to try to arrive to the end of the process. A third element that we need is to tell the history by dancer and reach the public. Theoretical and practical knowledge is also needed. It's needed to know how to act through the process to be in a process. For example, if we compare, we can say that a dance movement like the penché is visually similar to an arabesque, but it's not exactly the same. And that happened, for example, with a lawsuit and a complaint. There are a lot of elements in common, but it's not the same. And if we take another example, we can use a pas de chat, that in English is something like that, a step by two, or a season that visually is not the same. It's just the opposite. One is more closed, that is will remember us to a dismissal. It's like when we close an envelope, it's the same idea as to close a process, to archive a process. Or in the opposite side, a season that is a jam, a very opening jam, is like more similar to the opening or the opening session of a trial. It's just finally, in both disciplines, it's necessary to practice hard to get results. It's common that a student during the semester get tired and ask, that is too heavy to know the results of a process, and they ask, when we will see the results? And I think that sense, the correct answer it will be that the results appear when you, the student, enjoy the form more than the results. From here, we can pass to the second phase of the methodology of my proposal, that it will be more concrete. That means that we are going to deep in the development of a process, but through a case that will come from a classical dance piece, and using the storytelling technique. Any classical dance piece could serve as a point of reference to try to explain the legal process. In almost all of them, there is a intersubject and social conflict that disturb the public order. So we can change more or less the element, the basic element, but the idea is the same. In my case, I'm going to try in the last minutes, I'm going to try to share with you an example of what I propose taking in a specific ballet. I have chosen the ballet de corset that you have here, the more general element, and it's a love history between a pirate named Vivanto and a slave named Medora. If we try to apply here the basic element of storytelling, there are 4, and we can see the 4 elements. It's like the characters, the plot, the conflicts, and the theme of the message that we want to transmit. Depending on the innovative activity, using the plot and the character is possible. For example, to analyze the role of the subject of the case. From a criminal perspective, we can talk about active or passive subjects, and the same in a procedural perspective. So I have to try to represent there the position that the different characters of the ballet could develop in that sense. Also, with these 2 elements, we can identify the type of crimes. I have writing the types that the crimes that, according to the Spanish criminal code, we could apply in that case. So, for example, unlawful detentions and kidnapping, human trafficking, prostitution and sexual exploitation, homicide and murder, and the other one could be under discussion. So the student should try to define if they apply or not that other type of crime. No? And even we have to determine, according to the place of the facts, according to the author, the jurisdiction and the competent courts. And also the type of procedure. We have 4 different common procedures in Spain, and some special one. So depending this element, they have to choose or to identify the adequate procedure. The other element of the storytelling is the conflict, and in the ballet, in this case, we have to identify with 3 acts. This ballet is divided in 3 acts, and I think that it's perfect to a process, because in Spain the criminal process have also 3 phases. So the first one is what happened in this ballet, what happened in this history, what happened in this fact. So that is identified with the investigation phase of a criminal trial. In the second phase, where a lot of things with the parades happen, is the crux of the history. And in that sense, it's the center of the process. So it's the session of the oral trial, if we apply in the Spanish procedure. And during the setup, that is the final, the ending, it's happening, we could identify with the criminal sentence and the end of the process. I don't know if you know that in a ballet, it's always a flash point, a high point, that is the most important part of the scene, of the piece. Is normally a pas de deux, that is a step by 2, that is the representation between the dancers, the women and the men, and they go on the scene and demonstrate their dancing skill. First once, then another, then dance together, then separate again. That depends the ballet. And I think that it's exactly the same that happened in the trial, when we are trying to convince the judge of our position. So it's when we call about the evidence practices in oral trials, is more or less the same. We have an evidence, and the prosecutor try to answer to ask, for example, the witness of the expert about that part, and the other part, the defense, make the same, and they are going to changing the past to try to get the bravo from the judge. So according to the resolution of the case in his favor, no? And the epilogue is the resolution of the case. In the case of the Corsair, is in a struggle between the good and the devil, and the redemption through love. So I think that in this sense, we can identify the procedural message, that is the reason of the procedural system, the utility of the process, and the purpose of the sentence and of the judgment in that sense. According to the result, probably is the part that I have to develop, because what I have designed is a learning model for teach law and to implement this model in procedural law. I think that the benefit is that allow the teachers to simplify complex data, to contextualize the knowledge, and expose possible conflict with an emotional component. But I haven't had the opportunity to apply, because I'm novel in this university. I thinking this idea 1 year ago, more or less. And in that moment, I changed from another university to here. And last course, I didn't teach criminal procedural law. So I have to wait until next semester that I have 2 courses on this material. So I think that I hope to try to apply to prove my proposal. And personally, I think that that emotion may play a crucial role in how we remember experience. I think that action and words are important in the construction of the knowledge of the student, but to be good lawyer, great legal professional, and better people, I think that they have to be motivated not only by what they learn, but by how they feel about the learning. And that's the reason why I want to finish with a sentence of Maya Angelou that I think that summarizes this idea. That is, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I hope I made you feel good during this presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luciana. Any questions? Okay. Yes.
I'm
okay.
waiting for this moment for 1 month. Lucan, only one question. Do you remember the spark that gave you this idea? It should be came from somewhere.
Yeah. I have some friends at the University of Santiago de Compostela that they like a lot the arts. And they usually try to compare the law with some area of arts. And they have an annual meeting, an annual seminar that's called Law and Arts, but they always write in the subtitle. Literature, cine, cinema, music. And once they ask me, do you think that we can add anything else? And I just think dance. I have to recognize that I dance ballet, so I know the elements, I know the stage, I know more or less the main idea. So it's not so difficult to me to try to think in how I can make the comparison. But I think that and I also thought about ballet because I think that is something very strange for the student. And when I enter in a class and say that I am going to teach procedural law, usually they say, what? Excuse me? And what's that meaning? So I say, I'm going to look for something strange, at the same level of the procedure for some student of the second level. But I think that we can change the element and, for example, use I don't know, street dance that now is Olympic game. No, it's part of the Olympic game. So they have also an instructor, some battles, some combination of main elements. I don't know the rules in that case, so I should research for that to make the comparison. But the idea was thinking in art, what is missing, no? And I have that feedback, so I try to mix these two passions, no?
During my studies, I found criminal procedure very difficult and very boring, and I skipped. I forgot everything about it. If you taught me, it would be otherwise, I'm sure. So this was fascinating. I regret I hadn't opportunity to listen to your version of criminal procedure. Okay,
I can invite you and to come. There is no.
I want to be able to participate, but my question is about analogy between persons which act in criminal court and people who are engaged in classic ballet. Well, we have a public prosecutor and defendant, and this I understand well. They perform, there are some tensions, and there is an outcome. They try to impress public, yes, to win somehow, yes, with their performance. How about the judge? Who is the judge in this picture? do you think that the judge in criminal court also acts and tries to impress somebody, or he's only the director of this spectacle?
I think that maybe the judge could be the public. If we make the comparison, it will be the public, because when you dance, it's a way of expression, but your main object is to arrive or to transpass the scene and arrive to the public. And if they shout you bravo or stand up or something like that, is that feeling of the job is a good job. And if we compare that fight between the two parties, the public is the judge. In the Spanish system, in the criminal process, the judge a very limited power. So yeah, we don't have a judge that could investigate the scene. Is that we separate both the investigation phase from the judgment. So you have to reach to the judge to get that bravo, to get that stand up, to give you the prize that maybe could be a sentence in favor of your party. It's like depending on who win. It's like I mean that maybe the judge could hold that.
Okay, so I think this should be included in your future endeavors in the subject, that the judge plays a role in this picture. Thank
because
you
maybe
very
the
much.
director could be the other subject of the legal system. No, maybe it's like who try to, you can pass. Here is what we call judicial secretary. It's like that is like to try to control that everyone is in its position, and we have to open this session, or we have to stop. So maybe the director could be another subject of the legal system.
Two thoughts.
Okay.
I love the idea. At first, I asked you already discussed how this could be if we referred to street dance or modern dance, because ballet has very strict procedures. So we can have the analogy and the ontologies on this. So I think in your research, you should think this comparative shifts in order to establish further your own paradigm, the one. And the second, I think from a criminologist perspective, the crime is a different procedure than the criminal procedure. And I think during the storytelling, it should be something else, not in this analogy, because are different ontologies.
Yeah,
I think you understand my point.
Yeah, I have studied criminology too, so I can understand.
Okay, so that's why
the idea. That is maybe the reason why I don't deep in the first phase of the procedure. That because that part is more criminology maybe, and is outside the real court. So it's like this is a phase. It's like what's happened, and I don't make reference, or are not being focused on who can do its part, who can develop that part of the process. That is okay. We have to give to arrive to here, but this part I have left in another side just for that idea. That is different mechanisms, different principle, different ontology. Yeah.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Maybe a student of yours would have the idea, so I think.
Yeah, I understand the idea, so thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Volodymyr, please. The floor is yours.
Hello. Hello for everybody. I'm Volodymyr Zaslavsky from Kiev University, Faculty of Computer Science, and we working together with my colleague from Institute of International Relations and Yulia Tsirfa, and we will discuss about some ideas to development approach time variety principle for education and for research activity, education, and mixed application. This idea for different area for development mathematical tools, mathematical model, and algorithm for solution different type of problem, and so on. And the second. Agenda is this. My presentation is from introduction for diversity, formulation of type variety principle as we create and use, and also application this idea for modern teaching and learning method. Also for inform you this is some base of innovation and interdisciplinary and application this scientific this idea for scientific research, critical infrastructure, energy, beekeeping, and other. Diversity is very important term, and in mathematician area, this diversity is a number of different elements set A. We have here set, and diversity is different elements. But next question is we will consider next the development of diversity and second element. What is new with this element? It's very interesting, and it's some question for researcher, for scientists, for application, and this idea was developed for reliability. I was involved in project for creation satellite, and its critical element, critical system, very expensive, and redundancy was some part for support higher reliability of this complex system. But when we consider different elements who was created for useful for this for construction of this technical system, we have a probability of different element characteristics, and is some redundancy construction number 3 or 5, and on this picture you will see demonstrate typical redundancy that we consider, but necessarily consider this type of type variety redundancy when we use for redundancy different type of element, but this element have equal function. It's very important, and I introduce you some mechanism for creation different type of redundancy. Its mechanism was created, and we generate version different type of from different type of elements, and other time this is a lot of possibility because it's discrete optimization problem, and we generate version of probability and for constraint for version of this subsystem or module of this system, and this is a practical task. Maximize reliability of construction of satellite, full satellite under constraint for weight, for energy, for example, and so on and so on. This mathematical model was we prepare software for designing, and we cooperate with Design Bureau in the Soviet Union period, and this software was introduced for the Design Bureau and for satellite who create module for subsystem, more 100 institution. Also, this idea with type variety was useful for found a defect in the complex system. no, in this picture, you will see some element of NPP system, nuclear power system, who generate it's just sorry. This is a different Ukrainian NPP factory, no, NPP system, Khmelnytskaya, Zaporozhskaya, Rovinskaya, and resources of the system for 40 years, 35 years, but these resources tied and necessary consider situation and found defect. And we propose for found defect also complex different type of elements. It's not destructive testings, and found this it proposes complex for found defect, and it was very useful. It's economy for money, time, and so on, and so on. It was second application. And also this idea was developed for, I working in the International Institute for Applied System Analysis as a scholarship program. I was involved in water quality project for design treatment technology for water quality in Dunai River with American scientists, and this idea was very useful for creation this technology. Also, was interesting for payment system in Ukraine, and we introduced this idea for analysis of transaction and payment system. We create new technology, new algorithm, and use different type of data for analysis of transaction. And as a result of this idea, we formulated this favorite principle as a principle of system analysis. The main idea is necessary to compose together different model, different process data for solution problem together. As example of demonstrate this idea for education project, we received a special project from with Norway University, Trondheim University. It is the name of this project. We have here partner from Academy of Science, also partner from Georgia University, Moldova University, and company Miratech is IT technology, Transport Academy from Moldova, and we create, it's our management connection, and we create also special ideas for experience for create technology for risk management for Eurasia partner. Also some synergy for quality of education program, and organize free summer program for innovation, also for teaching, and program for organizing workshop together with business, with IT technology, specialists for IT technology, and organize business practice in Ukraine, in Norway, also with colleague from different university. This is some result of our activity. We prepare a lecture for joint group of university, also seminar, practice in Moldova, in Batumi University, and other. As a result of this activity, we was create a business informatic program where I manage as a guarantee, and I read a course, type 30 principle, theory in practice, and for master level students, and also I manage PhD students who was involved in this idea developed in different area. No, it's our students was a mobility for 6 months in Norway, and they also have a colleague from Norway, and they now working together for creation dissertation in Norway and in Kiev also. No, it was some picture for period of Russian war situation. You will see monument Taras Shevchenko was closed, and near rebuilding we have a special equipment, and is some accident from our university, and our students also died, and it's our problem, and we lose of nice generation, nice students, nice people. And I would like to thank you very much for Norway, European country, also for Spanish and other for support us. And the idea of type variety is have a diffusion, and it's some root of innovation. And we developed this idea for cooperation with in our university with different program. And I have a book. I show this book for you. Our students from my faculty cooperate with Faculty of Geography, working together, create a project, joint projects, and published 4 books every year. These books was published about activity, about new ideas for development, some regional development, also some practical problem in change situations in the city, in the environment, and so on. And Julia, please, you.
Thank you so much. In our institute, I represent the Educational and Scientific Institute of International Relations of our university, and in particular, the Department of International Regional Studies. And of course, having come from cybernetics, the type variety principle is widely used in the educational process of our students, in particular during their studying in the field of international regional studies. The students should realize the most important aim of the international regional studies, so international country studies. They learn the international country studies when they are bachelors. We have such educational program. They need to present the prognostication, the prognosis of the development of each country in every region they choose. So they need to be involved in the economic, historical, political, sociological, and other types of knowledge concerning every country in the region. So in order to prepare the prognosis or the general portrait of the country in the region, they need all the knowledge to be used. However, sometimes some parts of the knowledge are closed, or maybe they are not they cannot be achieved, they cannot be used. So in that case, they can use some of the parts of knowledge to create such a portrait and to present the prognosis or even the analytical report concerning the development of the foreign policy of each country in the region or of the region in general. So they use the type variety principle to combine different knowledge from different spheres. Also, they are very diversified because they receive 2 diplomas when they finish their studying. They can be both international political scientists and the translators from the language they chose. So the diversity is also here. It's in general. Thank you so much.
Yes, and very important that this principle also cooperate with this with creativity, is computer science, creativity, knowledge, and also we combine different ideas, knowledge together for solution problem, and also generate different organize some diffusion of this idea for different application. It's critical infrastructure. I bring to Ukrainian government law for critical infrastructure with colleague from Bulgaria, from Germany, and my application was for energy system, and it's a dissertation my PhD students, but it was idea to use different information from European standard. In Europe country, they use a different type of technology for generation energy. We use HP hierarchy method of SATI for solution problem for analyze situation in Europe and solution problem for Ukraine. And we found similar solution very useful for Ukraine. And at the time, I managed a project for rehabilitation of people who he received the problem from conflict. And this idea to consider different practice, for example, cardio, flexibility, strength, and we generate special set of exercise who are very useful for positive for these people, and introduce this idea for management of rehabilitation, and our medicine part of biology university supported its brilliant idea for development. And also I manage a project with PhD students for bees, because it's also very important for us, and it's some agenda about activity, because climate change also we have some problem with destroyed beekeeper territory, and bees is very important, and we use different type of bees. For example, here, because this very interesting and different type of bees working and bring a lot of honey from different flower trees, and its economy, it's circular economy, and we create mathematical tools and software for support beekeeper, for management, also for very important for support and demonstrate problem with health of bees, and it's very important also because climate change and necessary change process for management for beekeeper and informate about it. It's some information about climate change and influence bees in the territory of different country, and also climate change, and people understand that necessary change situation and change approach for management. And you will see here some illustration of destroyed, and these bees coming to other place, coming to other territory, and with some problem with ill, and coming to other boxes, and it's also a big problem. But honey is 6th line of export in Ukraine now. And also pesticides, it's a very big problem, and necessary to discuss with beekeeper. Yes, I finished. Discuss with beekeeper and specialist agriculture for discussion, and consider together to consider problem with pesticide. It's necessary organize this meeting and discussion. Thank you very much for attention. And I told you we create this idea with priority principle, and also the very important, we create mathematical model and algorithm for solution this problem, and disseminate this idea for different application. I found different area, different very critical and important task for solution problem, but diversity is very important for education, creation of designing of education problem, also for PhD students and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? May I ask the type of the algorithm used offers a classification or offers a prediction as well? You said that you cooperated with NTNU and tried to classify the research and the master thesis and the PhD. This is a classification procedure.
Yes.
Okay, but what about the prediction of the knowledge that could be shared on informatics, for example?
I told you we have a long time cooperation, and in this year I finished this project, because when we involved a lot of university, we found a joint activity, joint project for I teach some lecture for master level in Georgia, also in Moldova, and we communicate and we harmonize education problem together. Also, we receive special money for organize innovation school. And in Moldova and in Batumi, we organize it, and a lot of business, a lot of people from government comments for the school and discuss with student, show some problem. It was also very useful idea. And we published in USA a big book about this innovation activity, and prepare now second book published in United Kingdom, because this is our practice, and we teach our students and also PhD students. And from my point of view, it's very important to cooperate together with different universities and bring this idea and develop this idea together, because diversity is the root of innovation. No, it's practical, and I told you it's when we create satellite lifetime, 3 years, 7 years, 11 years, it's very necessary to create new technology, new idea, a lot of different process, but no, it's real life. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
So, Felix.
Oh, we don't. All right. Okay, no, you can manage to catch up. All right. So let me find my presentation. Okay. There should be hopefully another. I copied my presentation here, and somebody, and it has moved. Let me see if it's still here, because I have copied it. There we go. Okay. Okay. My name is Felix Diaz. I work at New Bulgarian University. I'm going to be talking about simulation in disability studies. Basically, there is this general sort of activity in disability studies, which is called disability simulations. And I want to discuss my experience with it in teaching disability studies, okay? I'm going to start talking about experientialism, because I believe that any sort of simulation, but particularly the way we do disability simulations, they gain their meaning, or they gain their educational value from the perspective of experientialism. I will present disability simulation activities, what they are. I will present the 4 different simulations I have been doing since I teach a course on disabilities for 4 years. Okay, and then I will describe a little bit of my own students' responses to these activities, so that as a way of reflecting about how they work for their purposes, okay? So experiential learning is defined by David Kolb, one of the figures of experientialism, as a process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience, where experience consists basically of a personal phenomenological condition of consciousness, where you are, something is happening to you in your experiential world out of being somewhere and doing something, okay? So it is, experience is associated to effective, specific practical activity, doing, okay? So the Kolb proposes what he calls the cycle of experience, which starts with active experimentation. Active experimentation allows to have concrete experiences. We can observe our own experience in specific situations that will lead to abstract conceptualization, and this completes a cycle of knowledge, of building up knowledge. It's very constructivist, which will continue in a next iteration, because the abstract conceptualization leads to further opportunities for active experimentation. Okay, now I have to introduce the social model of disability so that we understand, first of all, disability studies. Disability studies as a discipline emerged in the 1980s, more or less, and they gradually got more conventionalized, and they rely on a social perspective of disability, which is stands in contrast and opposition to an individual medical model of disability. The social model emerged as a result of the self-organized activity of disabled people in the 1970s in Britain and North America mostly, and then extended to Europe and to other parts of the world. So here we understand impairment as a loss or limitation of physical, mental, or sensory functions for a long or permanent period, or a medically classified biophysiological condition. In other words, something that happens in the individual structure of a person, okay, something that affects physically and or functionally the capacity for somebody to function normally at the individual level. And disability is different from impairment. Disability consists of a disadvantage or restriction of activity which is caused by a contemporary social organization which takes little or no account of people who have physical impairments, and thus excludes people from the mainstream of social activities. In other words, disability does not happen at the level of the individual body or the individual functioning. It happens in the interface between an individual with impairments and a world which is not ready to accommodate the participation of this person. Okay, so disability in the social model is understood as a relation of oppression in the political and social sense. Disablement comes from the verb to disable, okay, is imposed, okay, not produced by the person, it is imposed externally by the unnecessary isolation and exclusion from participation to people who have impairments, right? So the social model is not about disability as an individual phenomenon. It is about how impairment is experienced in a society which is structurally disabling, okay? So in order to understand disability, in a course on disability studies, what we have to be looking at is at impairments and the way in which they are accommodated, in the way in which they clash with the social conditions which are available, okay? It may sound a bit abstract, but I think we will, I mean, when I start talking about particular impairments, we will see. Okay, so basically, in a social model of disability, we are not interested in disability as an object, as a thing that happens to persons. We are more interested in disability as a social process and as an experience, something which is experienced by persons who are subjected to disablement, okay? In the process of trying to participate, trying to live in a society which is imposing certain limitations. So we will be thinking about, I'm still kind of introducing the social model, we will be thinking about questions of assessment of disability, about how somebody's life differs from the life of other people, how does a person's functional repertoire adjust to educational and social requirements. I'm thinking a little bit about children, but also social requirements for participation in the adult world, how the person's environment support or allow them to participate more or less, to what extent. And also we want to think in terms of intervention in practical terms about, we want to look at the person's functionality, And that has to do with projects for rehabilitation. We also want to focus on how environments are designed to support, more or less, to support in a better way, people with impairments. And that means intervening at the level of networks, social organization, physical environments, and social environments. Okay. This is a very quick introduction to the social model of disability and how I believe it should condition the way we teach disability studies. And there's a crucial notion here, which is that of adaptation and accommodation. Okay, those of you who are into constructivist psychology, Piaget is the same notion of adaptation and accommodation. Adaptation consists of changes which should be or may be introduced in the interface between a person with impairments and their environment to enable, facilitate, or adjust participation. And this may be physical properties of the environment, ways of treating people, ways of organizing activities, conversational structures when we're talking about communication, okay, social environments for participation, okay, in the interface between the individual and the environments where they participate. Okay, so I'm going to go straight into presenting disability simulations, which are activities which give students of disability studies the opportunity to participate in society, to do things in everyday life from the position of a person with disablement. A classical, the most classical one is go around sitting on a wheelchair. Okay, and it has been done for a long time. You get a normotypical person who does not need a wheelchair to sit on a wheelchair and to go out in the city. Okay, you find a wheelchair, you borrow it often from a health center, you go and do some activities. I organize this for students to do it in pairs. One pushes the wheelchair and the other one sits, and then they take turns, they change. Okay, and they move around the city or around campus, the university campus, as persons with mobility problems. And always in all the disability simulations, the assessment part of the activity consists of writing a report, okay, which then is discussed in class. So that we have 1 or 2 sessions where students discuss their experience, and eventually every student sends a report, which is on the basis of the report I assess them. Okay. This is the wheelchair user activity. Another classical one is put on a blindfold and do things at home, or go around everyday life, or participate in social situations blindfolded. Okay, you put on a blindfold. Some of us have done it. Okay, so you do tasks of your everyday life with a blindfold on. And you write a report. Reports for these activities are always include 3 components, the way I am designing them: description, reflection, discussion. Okay, description is what did I do, what happened, okay, in a kind of rigorous description of what happened. Reflection means in what way what I was experiencing, what I think, what it makes me think about impairment in our societies. Discussion is more critical discussion about how things are organized, how they can be improved, what sort of interventions we could develop which adapt to my experience. Okay, now I'm going to introduce 2 very peculiar forms of disability simulations. They are very peculiar because they do not consist on simply imposing on somebody a feature which will make you behave like a wheelchair user or like a blind person. Okay, it's not like you fold your eyes and then you are like a blind person, or you sit on a wheelchair and then you are like somebody with cerebral palsy. It's more like impose on yourself a way of acting, a way of participating in social life, which resembles in some ways the cognitive and communicative experience with somebody who is delayed, slow, has a cognitive impairment, has a difficulty to communicate. Okay, and I have devised 2 of these. One I call late or never, and it consists of delay. So you participate, oh my God, I'm going to be delayed again. So you participate in some sort of social activity while taking it very slow and waiting for 5 seconds before you make the next move. Okay, I mean, this is not a disabled, this is not an impaired condition. This is I'm asking students to for a couple of hours to behave in a particular way which will allow them to experience what it is like to be slow in a society where everybody goes at a certain pace, what consequences it has for you, which are consequences similar to those experienced by people, for example, with intellectual disability. A similar thing, a similar exercise, I call it in silence, and I'm just asking people to be quiet. In social situations, okay? In situations where we will find out one thing which is very common is that when you go silent, you discover that you are missing many opportunities, that power and control and management of activity is in the hands of those who talk, okay? And that may give you an experience of what it means to have dementia and not be able to participate, what it means to be a stutterer who ends up not contributing because it's embarrassing to talk when you stutter, and so on and so forth, okay? They are very artificial exercises. I am just inviting students to experience something similar to what is experienced, okay? Okay, and finally, I mean, I must have like a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to close down. Okay. I think we do have some extra minutes, yeah. I will take longer. I'm going to speak very slow now. Okay, so what I did, the sort of empirical part of this presentation is I have been doing these activities in several courses. So I picked up one course with 17 students and the 4 activities, okay? And I have done a qualitative analysis of the reports. In these reports, I look at I mean, they have instructions to describe thoroughly, to reflect, to discuss, and I'm looking particularly at the way in which they discuss accommodations in the process of simulations, the way they discuss the reactions of other people, which are fundamental for the integration of disability. So how other people reacted to somebody on a wheelchair or to somebody who was very slow. And an element which is fundamental for experientialism, which is text in the report, where they say, this was very important for me to learn this or that, or for me the main challenge was this or that, okay, what I have learned, okay. And here I'm going to very quickly describe. For me, what's interesting here is how the difference between the 4 activities: wheelchair activity, blindfolded, late or never, which means delaying your action, and silence, which means staying quiet. They invite different sort of accommodations, okay? So we can see how, for example, the blindfolded and the in silence activity involve recurring to alternative functional systems. Typically, if you cannot see, you use touch and hearing, for example. And if you have to stay quiet, you use visual forms of communication, for example. Whereas the wheelchair, so we see, for example, that help from others is fundamental in situations of blindfolded and wheelchair activity, okay? And not so much for the other ones, which the strange simulations do not invite any sort of response, any sort of specific support from others, because basically people get puzzled. If we count the different reactions by other people, strangers, not other students, but people who you come across on the street, we see that the, let me see, the late or never activity, the delayed activity, makes people very uncomfortable. People find it hard to wait, similar with the silent activity, okay? Whereas the reactions by others, in terms, I mean, the sort of activity which demands more collaboration from others are the wheelchair activity and the in silence activity. Being in a wheelchair is a very classical, very salient way of disability, which immediately calls attention and brings people to come and help. Okay, whereas other more kind of ambiguous conditions do not. Or being quiet also, okay? They involve other people trying to help you. And the most important for me for an experientialist activity, which is the discussion of students of what they learned, I see an alarming amount of comments about the relevance of the lost function and the discovery of what it means to lose a function. Discussions about inclusion and lack of inclusion are very, very characteristic in the blindfolded activity, but in all of them, okay, in all of the activities. And there is very little relevant, very little kind of learnings concerning the relevance of accommodations for people doing the wheelchair activity, which is also interesting because there would be so much to say about accommodations for physical impairments and movement. Okay, so very quickly, three kind of observations, three of my learnings from this analysis. One is disability simulations do contribute to experientialist learning. They provide opportunities for awareness, reflection, for feeling about a specific practicing context, for learning from a cognitive and emotional experience. This is what experientialism is about. They work in a way similar to interventions by Lippitt and Lewin, social psychologists who started working with experientialist ways of group work, okay, where basically reflecting about activity led to sociological analysis, and this is something we want to do in disability studies. I really value reporting in written form. I think it's something that has been mentioned today in other presentations. Writing, giving students the opportunity to write about their experience is fundamental to articulate their thinking, articulate their cognition and emotion in the conventional language of the discipline, also like kind of disciplining people to use the terminology to reflect about their own experience in terms of the discipline. And one thing, especially from the results of students' reports, I am kind of worried about the amount of discussion and comment by the students which indulge in what I call the exotification or mystification of disability, which is this description. I mean, it's their opportunity to experience something completely different. So in that sense, we can expect this. But this idea that sitting on a wheelchair, not being able to move, not being able to see, is so extraordinary. Okay, which in a way is not exactly what we want, because what we want in the process of accommodating disability is to normalize it and to invite people to think about ways in which these extraordinary forms of existence can be regularized and normalized among ourselves by way of adaptation and accommodation. So I think I have reached possibly my 15 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So I will stop here, and if there's any questions while we wait for a surprise. Okay, I can talk more, but I can answer questions. Oh.
So, any questions for Felix?
Thank you for this interesting presentation. I had never thought much about disability studies, so you sort of opened my eyes in that respect. I was wondering, within this framework, is there a difference between accommodation and adaptation, or are they used interchangeably? Okay, this is my
No, they're not used interchangeably. That's a good question. So I was mentioning Piaget, I was mentioning constructivism. So here in disability studies, the notion of adaptation is exactly the same which kind of Piaget uses, which is actually inherited from evolution theory, which is adaptation. There are two forms of adaptation, or two complementary aspects of adaptation: accommodation and assimilation. So in terms of disability, to assimilate a disabled person means to incorporate them in the normal ways of functioning. So for example, if you expect somebody on a wheelchair to go up and down the stairs, you're assimilating them. Right? If you are expecting that somebody who cannot move their lower limbs will have to take the bus just like everybody else does and stand on the bus. That means assimilating people. Basically, the system does not change. It is the person who has to be assimilated, has to just go with whatever there is. Accommodation means that is the complementary aspect of adaptation. Accommodation means that the system, the society, our social organization has to arrange some ways in which we can accommodate people who are different. So, for example, when there is a person who is stuttering and we have a meeting, the meeting has to take longer because we want to listen to everybody. So when it is the turn for the person who stutters, who talk, let them have 20 minutes instead of 15 because they need more. That's accommodating somebody. So adaptation means basically that the two sides have to complement together.
Thank you. I have another one, if I may.
Yep.
Also, how do you choose the disabilities you teach? Because you showed, was this just for the presentation you chose these for? Or are these the four you teach? Because how about autism or other disabilities?
I teach a course which goes progressively through, I mean, the contents, the units are different kinds of impairment. So there is childhood, there is neurological disorders, and that may include autism. There is also old age, which includes all the physical impairments with dementia. There is affections of mobility, and those are the different units. And since I have four, because I have introduced the four in sequence, I insert them at the right moment along the term. Yeah.
Well, last one, if I may. Talking about political correctness, which is the buzzword, lately. So haven't there been any disabled people who have come up to you and say, this is not the way to teach, like just tying your eyes for half an hour or one day? This does not reflect my experience. Have you had such cases?
Okay, so that's definitely an issue. Okay, it is a simulation because we're not blind. Okay, the first time I taught this course, there was a student with cerebral palsy in the class. Okay, so she didn't have to do the simulation because basically the simulation was her life. She was always on a wheelchair since she was 5-year-old or 3-year-old. Okay, and she was not the one who complained. I mean, she didn't complain at all. She found it very interesting, and instead of doing the simulation, she just wrote a report about her life. Okay. There were other students who kind of objected. So I have had a few students who were objecting to this, normotypical students, who were saying it feels very uncomfortable, and it does feel uncomfortable, to be simulating something which some people have to experience yes or yes, and they have no option. This idea that I sit on a wheelchair and then I get up and I walk away, okay? And which people who are kind of doomed to be on a wheelchair, they cannot do. In my opinion, this is not a critique. This doesn't mean that the simulation is a bad idea. It means that the simulation is going to remove some feelings. And I think this is fine. It's good that we share these feelings.
Hi. Did you receive any kind of support from your institution?
Support for
do this research?
For doing the simulations?
For do the study?
I mean, they are part of a course. They are part of a course which I have been teaching at the American University in Bulgaria, and I will teach at New Bulgarian University next term. So they are part of an elective course. Practical support, for example, for the wheelchair activity, which requires wheelchairs, the local health center of the university was, and normally they support for this. Hopefully in New Bulgarian they will also support like to borrow wheelchairs. Is that kind of support what you mean?
Yeah, but maybe I was thinking about some kind of money from your institution.
No, if any institution wants to give me money,
And the second one is, did you submit this study to some journal?
No, I mean there have been many publications about. I mean, because I have reviewed them for this publication. So I mean, I can pass you some references because disability simulations have been done for a long time. Okay, what is innovative in my case, where I'm innovating here is I'm introducing the one in silence and the one of the delays, which are very artificial as an experience. I mean, there's already a tradition in the literature. I mean, it is being published as part of the proceedings of this conference. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
Could you say us which is the profile of the student who followed the course that you offer?
Okay, so the students.
I don't know if any degree where the course is.
I didn't say that. These are students who are taking a bachelor's degree in psychology. Yeah. Both in the course I taught before and in the one I will be teaching next term, it's a bachelor's degree in psychology. So they are normally they will be in their 4th year studying psychology. So they are they are not very much into the medical organic aspects of disability, but they are, for example, I teach them about activity theory, which is very relevant, about ecological psychology, affordances, sociocultural psychology, cognitive psychology, functionality, and so on. Yeah.
Me then.
Right.
Have you thought about the idea to compare groups, disabled people and students normal using AI tools?
No, how would that go? How would that be? How would I do that?
I'm thinking loud. Sorry for that. You said about the silent activity, and I was thinking maybe the AI tools can provide the opportunity to people to feel the experience differently. And
okay, so I'm not very good at AI, but now that you're saying this, one thing that could be done is I could compare the reports of my students about how they feel when they have to be in silence with the written reports of people who have to be in silence, like people who have mutism and can write. And I'm sure those are published. I mean, I'm sure it's possible to find those. Yeah. But how would I do that with AI? Can I ask AI, can I ask ChatGPT, tell me how a mute person feels?
No, if the students that are in the disability to use the AI to express themselves.
All right, to use alternative means of communication. Yeah, to experiment with different means of communication.
And try to compare then how the control group of the students that are studying psychology.
Yeah,
that's thought.
For sure. I mean, any opportunity to experience different forms of functionality and how they can be accommodated. This is the whole point is to experiment with constraints on functionality.
Yes, because under your framework, if a student doesn't know how to use a computer, it's in the same category with a student.
It's similar. Yeah.
Okay. He has to be adaptive to the system.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I'm thinking in that way.
So I would like to ask you, because you teach, but you prepare some practical, if necessary to people to show as a travel, because it's some problem with hand and so on. No, we operate with hospital, and it's people who have some problem with moving, some problem with some activity and so on, and necessary to show as a first step for movement, for example.
You mean that some
and prepare some elements from wood that and support it and so on. No, it's modeling of real life.
All right.
Yes, because it's people who was in military, some problem with health. With
You mean devising an activity where people do have to go through particular challenges, physical challenges?
And possible also to prepare some practical in this computer system for showing.
Yeah.
And modeling and we're working in this area, and also if they understand it,
yeah,
he show it through telephone for friends.
I mean, I can see the
Yes, it is necessary because it's teaching through experience. You see?
So I mean, it's teaching through virtual experience, right? Because you're modeling.
And as a question is also some limitation, because if you have some problem, how much to was exercise 3, 5, or 1 hour, and it's necessary also analyze and after practice.
Yeah.
People ask you better? Yes, I feel me better. You see, and it's also some steps level, and we change or prepare more active practice, and moving this people for life.
Okay, that's for people who have the impairments, for sure. Yeah. Now, what you were mentioning about experimenting or modeling different sort of environments, one of the reasons why the wheelchair activity is interesting is because it invites students, gives students the opportunity to discover how bad the municipality is at taking care of the pavement. Because we know, particularly in Bulgaria, like people, Bulgarians in the room know how badly the municipalities are taking care of the pavement for people walking. Now, when you sit on a wheelchair, you discover how bad it is. Okay, and I think that in that sense, it is a great opportunity to do it in the actual environments where you do live, with the real in your neighborhood and so on. It gives you a completely new view of your neighborhood. And of course, I agree that computer simulation offers the possibility for simulating any kind of difficulty and experimenting with different degrees of complexity. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you all very much for the interesting presentations and the very interesting conversation.